Blacks in technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.
Good evening, techies and techettes, everybody out there. Welcome to the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. This is episode number 70. We are like 30 away from 100. I don't know what we're going to do when we hit 100. Maybe, I don't know, do some type of celebration because 100 is a big number. That's a long way. We did a lot of podcasts, had a lot of fantastic guests just to get to this spot. And so 100 is kind of monumental. So we'll think of something. We'll do something. I am your host, Greg Greenlee. I don't have a co-host for this evening, so I'll be doing this solo. If this is your first time listening, you can follow Blacks in Technology at the following URLs. We're at www.blacksintechnology.net. We are also on the Twitters, and that's at Black in Technology, and that's BLKINTECHNOLOGY. You can check us out on Facebook as well. That's facebook.com/Blacks in Technology. And we also have a LinkedIn group for Blacks in Technology under the name Blacks in Technology. So if you're listening or if you're on Twitter right now, you have any questions for our guests, tweet them using the hashtag BitTechTalk, and that's BITTECHTALK. Also, if you want to get updates on what Blacks in Technology is doing, what's coming up in the future, go to our website, subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll get updates monthly about what we're up to. So who is Blacks in Technology? We are a tech-focused community and media organization. We're focused on increasing diversity in technology. We're always focused on forming new partnerships and opportunities to assist our members with their continued professional growth and development. So if you want to partner with us, send us an email to partnerships@blacksintechnology.net. If you have any general inquiries, send us an email to info@blacksintechnology.net. And if you want to sponsor a podcast and get your brand, your product, or whatever in front of our wide audience, send us an email to sponsorship@blacksintechnology.net. A couple of announcements I want to make. We are Blacks in Technology. We're proud to announce that we have partnered with the Self Conference, and we are the official diversity sponsors for that event, and it's happening in Detroit, Michigan, in Motor City Casino, May 29th through 30th. We will also be holding a Blacks in Technology meetup. The venue is to be determined, but we will keep everyone informed. You'll receive something in the newsletter. You can check out the site. I'm pretty sure we'll have some posting up there pretty soon about where that meetup is going to be held at and our partnership with Self Conference. So the Self Conference is a mix of fantastic tech presentations and insightful soft talks in downtown Detroit. Like I said, it's in Motor City Casino. It'll be 2 days at the end of May. They'll be talking everything from mobile to web to hardware to software to processes. Team talks to help you expand your knowledge and meet other technically minded folk and immerse yourself in Detroit's tech renaissance. So check us out there. We'll also be announcing something pretty soon with Closure West. So if there are any developers out there that are active in the Closure community, we're going to be holding some contests pretty soon. We're going to be raffling off tickets to the Self Conference and also to Closure West, which I believe is in Portland, Oregon. So we're going to be also partnering with them, and we should be holding a meetup there as well. More to come on that later on. So also, Blacks in Technology, we are seeking a public relations and marketing person. So someone who's excited to apply their knowledge to real-world writing, media relations, marketing, promotion scenarios. Hit us up. Let us know if that's something that you like doing, because I tell you what, I don't like doing it. It's not my forte, and I get corralled into it all the time, and I'm not great at it at all. So we need somebody who is an expert in it, who loves to do it, and who loves to work with Blacks in Technology. So I want to introduce our guests. We have Nnena from Black Founders. How do you pronounce your last name, Nnena? I never asked you that.
Ukuku.
Ukuku. Okay, Nnena Ukuku. She's a tech startup attorney. She's co-founder and CEO of Black Founders, and a woman passionate about creating more opportunities for underrepresented communities in tech. Opportunities for the community happens by us being at the table, helping make the decisions that will impact our community instead of reacting to change. So I want to say thank you, Nnena, for joining us tonight. I also, before we get started, I do want to say congratulations on the grant that was awarded to Black founders. That is exceptional news. So congratulations on that. And I want everybody to know that we definitely have some history. I think we go back about 5 years. I think.
5 years.
I don't know who reached. Yeah, I don't know who reached out to who first, but it's just amazing that we're from basically two different sides of the United States, and yet we still have kept this relationship and kept this friendship going over the past 5 years. And I just want to say I definitely value your friendship and everybody else's friendship over at Black Founders and your support over the years. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. We value your support and your friendship. I think what's kept our relationship going is that we're both on the same side, and we're both fighting for the exact same thing, which is seeing our community move forward.
Yeah, absolutely right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us a little bit about your work with Black Founders, who Black Founders is, and what you all do.
Got it. So Black Founders exist to increase the number of Black tech founders of companies. And the reason why this is really important, the tech portion of our motto, is that we've noticed that the gap between the Black community and other communities as far as economics is directly tied to tech, both to careers in tech and also to founding tech companies. When you look at companies that have a huge hockey stick growth where they go from 0 to 1,000 extremely rapidly, those tend to be the more tech companies, more so than the mom and pop. You own a restaurant or you have a barber salon or even that you have a real estate company. And the reason why is because if someone builds a new chip to go inside a phone, that phone can be used all over the world and it can be manufactured everywhere and everyone has that phone in their hand. Whereas someone who walks into a restaurant, you can only take care of the needs of a certain group of people. So we started our organization about 4 years ago, and we realized that there was a need to educate our community on how to start tech companies. All four of us were living out here currently in the Bay Area, and we had access to a ton of great resources in the form of mentors and also just like being able to reach out to people like Steve Blank and other tech giants on a regular basis. So when we started Black Founders, we realized that our community needed to be connected and equipped. So they needed to be connected to peers, mentors, and when appropriate, funding, and also resources. So things like Black in Technology is a resource that we connect our community to because it's a huge resource. And then we also realized that people also needed to also be equipped. So we hosted educational programming. So everything from more technical educational programming, helping people who are more of a technical nature, to how do you maintain your relationship with your investors after you've received funding. We started out here in the Bay Area and started out with local events that either had a component of connection or equipping, and then we started having conferences in New York, Atlanta, and then also in Austin, Texas. Then outside of that, we realized that there was a huge need to increase the pipeline. As probably everyone is aware, if someone knows you and they have a relationship of trust with you, they're more likely to help you move forward. And what happens with our community is that, unfortunately, for many members of our community, they're not necessarily already plugged into the circles that are naturally going to be funding companies or to be giving advice to people. And once you start getting to the stage of where you're actually looking for funding, if you don't have those relationships in place, it makes it a little bit harder to get funding. So what we started doing is that we started reaching out to the HBCUs, the historically Black colleges and universities, and started having hackathons at their universities. The hackathons gave us a chance to basically bring to these college campuses the idea of just like creating a product. And what does it take to create a product, both from a technical standpoint, from a team building standpoint, and then also how do you deal with marketing, because marketing does matter. How do you deal with business plans? Like, what is it that you're actually trying to create? These hackathons were extremely successful with our students. Some of our students that went to our hackathons both at Howard and then also down in the AU Center, the AU Center down in Atlanta, those students then ended up with internships that were out here in the Bay Area. Why did that matter?
Oh, nice.
From those internships, they developed relationships. And it became normal to build a tech company versus that being something that somebody else out there does. Because they're now in the company of people who are, quite honestly, yes, they're amazing, but they really are normal people who are building companies. And so these students become a lot more comfortable and realize, wait a minute, I too can do that. And oh, by the way, I too have the right connections and the right mentorship to support me when I decide to launch my own company.
That's excellent. And so what I'm hearing is, kind of some things that I always like to echo when I talk to people about the state of Black people in technology is this thing about opportunities. And you always hear people talk about the opportunities that are out there. But what I like about what Black Founders is doing is that you are showing people how to take advantage of these opportunities that are out there. And it's just not, hey, go out there because there's an opportunity out there for you. It's, hey, look, this is how you take advantage of the opportunities that are presented. And here's the way that you move in these circles in order to be able to have these opportunities to take advantage of. So I think that's great. That's great. So tell us a little bit about go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to echo what you said. And that's actually normal. The people who are already in these circles, that grew up in these circles, they were taught that and they were exposed to that. And they also had to learn that. So it makes sense that the Black community also has to learn the same things.
Exactly. I also have another saying that goes along with that says, if you don't know what to do, you're only going to do what you know, right? So if we definitely have to. Yeah, so we definitely have to make people aware and equip them with the knowledge to be able to move within these circles. So yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. So tell us a little bit about the grant that you all have been awarded. I think that's fantastic achievement there.
Thank you. First off, let me give a shout out to Monique Woodard, the world's most amazing grant writer. She was amazing the way she knocked us out the ballpark. So we received the Blackstone Grant, and the Blackstone Grant is awarded to a couple of companies each year. And what's neat about it is that's through Blackstone Foundation. And they give us support throughout the whole tenure of us being one of their grantees, from media support and then just from mentorship and other ways that they help, just basically behind the scenes. The Blackstone Grant was for $100K, and it's to go to help support and create more college hackathons at HBCU campuses.
Nice. Excellent. So what colleges are you all going to be targeting? Is there a select geographical location, or are you kind of looking to be all over?
So the thing that we're using and doing is that we are reaching out to everyone, just overall, but really what determines which colleges that we go to are the ones that reach back out to us and say, you know what, we are willing to put some skin in the game, be it from a funding perspective to help these hackathons take off. And also, we have students who are self-motivated, who really want to be a part of this hackathon, who also help with the planning process. Schools that have both like their alumni and then the student body and then also the school itself that are basically meeting us halfway are the ones that we work with. So this coming up, we have not released our list yet for the fall, which there's quite a list for that, and it's not too late to get your alumni school on the list, and we can talk more about that later on. But one of the schools that we will be at this coming up spring will be Grambling. And they have, again, they met us halfway. They said, okay, we believe that this is important for our students. The student body is backing this. We, the administrators, are backing it. We have skin in the game. Let's do this.
Very nice. And, I don't know if I even need to say this. I probably don't, but whatever you guys need from Blacks in Technology, let me know. I'll help put the word out, help promote it. Like I said, we go back a number of years, and we're always happy to support whatever efforts you guys have going on. So definitely reach out to me and say, hey, can you help promote this? And it's done.
Right. Thank you. We will definitely reach out for you for that. And then just stay tuned for the list of the colleges that will be coming out in the fall. We don't want to announce that quite yet because that list is still being finalized.
Excellent. All right, so what we're really here to talk about, thanks for that rundown on Black Founders and the grant you all received. Good information. What we're really here to focus on is this is really kind of part two of the Bitcoin talk. So a few episodes ago, we brought on the guys from FIVA to talk about more of the technical aspect of Bitcoin, what Bitcoin was, what it involved on a tech level. And so we thought that we bring you in because originally the Bitcoin episode was going to be you and Tariq and a couple other people to talk about Bitcoin. And I think that was supposed to happen last year, and it never did happen for some reason. But I'm glad we were able to bring you back to talk about the legal aspect of Bitcoin. So we're going to jump into questions about that. So just give us, for people who didn't catch the last episode, give us a quick summary of what Bitcoin is.
So Bitcoin lives in a very interesting space between being both a currency and a technology. And as you mentioned before, the team from last time discussed more the technology aspect. But what we call Bitcoin is that we call it a cryptocurrency. And it's a peer-to-peer payment system, and it's also a digital currency. And it was introduced as an open source software back in 2009 by an unknown developer. Bitcoins are, what makes them interesting is that there's a technological aspect of Bitcoin that allows you to do things such as future contracts and things of that nature. But then there's the other aspect of Bitcoin that's actually viewed as a currency. And right now that's currently what's being regulated by the government. And so when I talk about Bitcoin, I say that it's both money, currency, and it's also technology. And people ask me often, well, then how could something that's technology actually have some sort of value to it? I don't understand where the value comes from. Well, it's the same way that if you look at a car or you look at, so for example, you have people who buy bottles of wine that have a certain value. Well, that bottle of wine is not actually cash in your hand, but we have assigned a value to that actual bottle of wine. That's the exact same thing with Bitcoin. We've assigned a value to this open source software, the program, the coins that are being mined. We've given it a type of actual tangible value, and then we are then trading based off of that value. Now, that being said, there is a actual tech component to it, which I will not touch, which would be really interesting to have another conversation about what people are doing with the actual blockchain of Bitcoin, how that actually provides additional security if you're dealing with everything from contracts or you're just dealing with the selling of goods. But that, I think, should actually be a separate conversation. But when I talk about Bitcoin, think of it as more, for our purposes today, think of it more as almost like money, as cash. It's not U.S. dollars, but it still is a form of currency that you can spend. Think of it as virtual currency is actually really what it is. So say you're in Farmville, and within the universe of Farmville, you are given a certain type of coins that you are able to buy things within Farmville. Those coins are not actually, U.S. dollars, but they have a value to them. And it's the same thing with Bitcoin. Within a certain universe, it has a value. Now, what's different between Bitcoin and, say, a Farmville sort of analogy is that with Farmville, it only has a value within that game, whereas with Bitcoin, it has a value worldwide. where someone here in the U.S. has assigned a value to it, that the markets overall have decided that this is the value of one single coin, and based off of that value, we're able to trade and sell and buy things with the coin.
Got you. So one of the things that I had a problem with grasping and kind of still do is, so Bitcoin is this kind of digital currency, and it just kind of, for me, and I'll be honest, I wasn't really up on Bitcoin until recently. And we've had a lot of discussions on Blacks in Technology about it. We have our IRC channel where it was talked about quite a bit. Talked about whether or not it's even worth it to mine Bitcoins at this point. There was we had about that, about the whole mining thing, and the cost of electricity, the cost of the actual miner itself. And for people who don't know what the miner is, this is the actual the computer, kind of supercomputer, so to speak, that actually it goes through, it solves these cryptographic puzzles in order to get you Bitcoins. And so you need a lot of horsepower in order to do this, as well as it consumes a lot of electricity. And so there was discussions in the IRC channel about, whether or not it was even worth the time and effort to even mine Bitcoins. But my thing about Bitcoins is, how do you essentially, out of what seems to be like nothing, just automatically say, okay, we're going to have a new currency, and here's what it is, and here's the value that's going to be placed on that, and we're just going to roll with this? What stops other people from actually saying, you know what, I'm going to take this monopoly money, I'm going to write $1,000 on it, and we're going to start trading this?
Well, you have to have someone who accepts the monopoly money to have that value. That's the key behind it. And that's honestly the key behind any sort of financial institution out there. Even with the U.S. dollar, there has to be someone on the other end who gives the U.S. dollar a certain value. And yes, we are backed by gold and by other things as well, but still at the end of the day, someone else has to accept that this is the value for this item.
Got you. Okay, so that makes sense. I guess it's the same concept as, a long time ago when people were trading, goats or whatever for,
or oil,
or oil, or or rocks or stones or whatever they used to trade back then. It was, will you accept this as payment? Yes. Okay, then it has value, and you go, okay.
Exactly.
So that makes sense.
Exactly.
So is Bitcoin legal everywhere, or are there places that kind of outlaw and say, no, we're not going to have this in our economy?
So it depends on what you mean by legal. That's, I hate to say that's
not illegal.
Illegal, yeah. I would say I think really the issue is not necessarily is it illegal or is it legal? How is it going to be regulated, and what sort of boundaries are governments putting around Bitcoin? The U.S. and China and several other countries are trying to grapple with this, whereas Europe is a lot more loosey-goosey and free-loving with Bitcoin, where they're not regulating it quite nearly as much as the U.S. government is. Is the use of Bitcoin illegal in the United States? No. How is it being regulated? That's the million-dollar question. It's viewed in some ways as currency, the same way that you would view cash. In some ways, it's viewed as a securities, like you would with any sort of stocks. And it also sometimes lives in this space. And because of that, you have different branches of the government who want to basically designate what happens. The IRS is actually one of the first parts of our government that came out the gate and determined, you know what, Bitcoin, it's considered like property. We're going to apply the same rules that we apply to property, and that's how we're going to tax you, and that's how we're going to receive revenue from Bitcoin. And so the IRS at least has figured out what they want to do with that. Now, the rest of our government is still sort of grappling with how do we handle Bitcoin? if it really is currency, do we apply all the exact same rules that we do to, say, U.S. dollars and the businesses out there that deal with U.S. dollars? So, like, the problems that Bitcoin is running into here in the United States, yes, sometimes people do use it for illegal activities, just like you do use cash, but really the issue is how heavy are the regulations going to be? And those are the same regulations that are also placed on a lot of payment companies that are out there. So the pain point of Bitcoin is the same pain point as the bank, as Western Union, as PayPal, and as anything else that deals with cash. So it's not necessarily illegal. It's just who's using it and how do we make sure that it's not being used for illegal activities. I think that's actually probably the better answer, is that it's not that it's illegal. It's legal to use Bitcoin, but how does the government prevent people using Bitcoin as a cover to hide from them laundering money and doing any other illegal activity?
Yeah, so that's interesting because Bitcoin, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not totally up on Bitcoin.
You're pretty good. You're pretty good so far.
It doesn't use banks, right? So how?
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So how do you kind of control? How do you set policy for something that's kind of more of an open source type of?
Yeah. Oh, Dad, you hit the nail on the head. You hit exactly what is bothering China and what is bothering the U.S. It's not necessarily from a bank. It's the fact that there is not a sovereign nation that is necessarily controlling it, so it's decentralized. You have no idea. And along with it being decentralized, it has this peculiar tendency of both being a trail you can follow and a trail that you can't follow. You can and cannot follow the money. So actually, let me go back to your first question, Kit. So it's not so. So this is where it gets interesting. There are Bitcoin companies that are trying to operate semi like a bank and also like a stock exchange, and also mirroring the other ways in which we use currency that's out there. So, but where it gets really interesting is because it is an electronic transmission of currency, you start getting into interesting areas of what happens when you send a Bitcoin to someone and it turns out that that person on the other end is fraudulent. You don't have some of the same protections that you would in, say, a typical payment system. Or say that, or what's going on right now is sort of the digital version of the armed bank robber, where you have someone who comes onto an exchange and they basically take all these people's Bitcoins and they're gone and they disappear, and you can't really find them. You can't really find them. And even some of the ways in which people had been trying to basically create security for Bitcoins, things such as cold storage, which again we'll have some more technical kind of talk about that a little bit more. We're starting to realize that there's some loopholes there and some weak spots there that don't allow you to keep your Bitcoins as safe as you would like them to be. For better or for worse, unfortunately, these problems are lending fuel to a lot of the regulators to why they believe that we should regulate Bitcoin more than it's being regulated right now.
Got you. So, in hearing that, so what are some of the, and not necessarily policies that are on the books, of course, but what are some of the policies that are floating out there that people want to put on the books, and I guess that's kind of So what's out there that I guess policymakers are saying, like, hey, maybe we can do things like this to kind of get this under control?
Right.
Are there any policies like that?
There are. So New York is trying to handle this issue, but then also the Bitcoin community is also trying to handle it on their own. So you have some companies, and the name of the company right now is escaping me. They just recently announced where they basically provide insurance for your Bitcoin. So up into a certain amount that you have, in your wallet within a certain business. So whoever it is, the business that you're actually storing your coins with, let me actually back up. The exchange that you're using, because this actually typically exchanges that have this particular type of insurance, up to a certain amount of money. If someone steals your Bitcoin, there's coverage for that. So that's one way in which the Bitcoin community is sort of trying to answer that problem through doing things like insurance. Where the regulators are trying to answer this problem and where it becomes really expensive for companies is that, for example, New York, there's a proposal for something called a bit license. And for companies that live in that space where they're considered basically a money services business, they're transmitting Bitcoin, they're an exchange, they're doing all sorts of things with Bitcoin other than, say, being a user or someone who's selling goods and services and they happen to accept Bitcoin. Everyone else who's outside of that, they would have to get what is called a bit license. What New York is doing with the bit license is that they're also basically trying to create some protection for the consumer where where the actual company needs to be able to back up to 100% of the value of the Bitcoins that are in the company in case something happens to someone's Bitcoin. And so those are some of the policy regulations that are out there that are coming down the pipeline. In and of itself, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to make sure that we don't have issues where money essentially disappears. I understand that. I completely understand where their heart is. I do. I don't want my money to disappear. Do you want your money to disappear out of your bank? You don't want it.
No.
But the problem is that
I'll make it disappear fast enough sometimes.
Exactly. I don't need anyone else's help. That's not the issue. Where it gets really complicated is that if I need to have not just if I need to have the full value of the coins that you are leaving with me in an account, how much harder is it for a startup to actually start up a business that deals in Bitcoin? It's really difficult because you are now, so for say you have $1 million worth of Bitcoin in your company, of other people's Bitcoin, then you need to have another $1 million in the bank as well in case something goes wrong. So now you have to capitalize at a lot, exactly. And these are not old rules that are out there. So just full disclosure, the space that I live in is that I'm a startup attorney and I work in a lot of different industries. There are others who work in the payment space and they're bankers. And it might be, again, I'm throwing more things at you. It would be really, really fun to get someone who's an old school banker who watched these rules come into place with the banks to also help us understand why these laws are in place and what's now going on with Bitcoin. That being said, these are some of the same rules that are out there for banks, and that's why it is so expensive to start up a bank, because you have to have a certain amount of money, no puns intended, in the bank before you can start up a bank to basically insure other people's money. And what that does is that it pushes out a lot of startups, and it also especially pushes out startups that I find to be really, really interesting. Startups that are so I'm a child of an immigrant, startups that are trying to send money overseas. Well, if I'm trying to send money overseas, at what point is it not what countries will fill in the blanks, any sort of remittance, kind of basically a Western Union for Bitcoin that's out there. How much money are they going to need to have in the bank before they allow me to send reserves over to my family in Nigeria? They're going to have an enormous amount of money in the bank. Well, then that means that then they're probably not going to send money to areas that are just not as financially lucrative for them. And so then that means that there's a certain population that misses out. And then even on top of that, if you're a small startup, you just don't have the resources out there. You haven't proven your idea yet. You don't actually know if this is really a valid business model. But, by the way, before you even prove that it's a valid business model, you have to have a certain amount of money in the bank. That puts you at a huge disadvantage, because who's going to fund something that hasn't actually launched yet? Very, very few people will.
Wow. So these policies can potentially hurt startups.
They can potentially hurt. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No.
But here's the other side of the coin: is that they could potentially hurt startups. They could potentially help people and protect people. But there has to be some sort of fine balance and a middle ground that has to be struck to allow that to happen. I think New York closed the comments on their BIT license earlier this week, so it'll be really interesting to see what they end up forming. New York is taking the head as far as dealing with anything with Bitcoin, and it makes sense. They're the financial capital, honestly, in my opinion, of the world. And so it makes sense that they're going to try to basically, create some of the law that's out there. What I really hope is that they won't go too far to one side and overregulate and essentially kill a lot of innovation that's out there.
Gotcha. So, what type of innovations are you seeing around Bitcoin right now that people should be aware of?
A lot of it's actually happening overseas. So some of the things that I find really interesting are just people are just creating new payment platforms. And some of them are very similar models as what's out here in the U.S., like very similar to, say, like a PayPal or a Hotel Tonight, which is not a payment platform, but more of a service. And they're allowing people to use Bitcoin to purchase items, or to, say, for example, buy a hotel room. What's really interesting about using Bitcoin versus some of these other currencies, if you're able to keep Bitcoin at least decently stabilized, it allows people who are from overseas to have more access to a U.S. market as far as selling their goods. Actually, let me back up a little bit. I'm sorry, I jumped a little bit too fast into this. Okay, so one of the benefits that I see with Bitcoin overall is that it opens up the world to many people as far as selling goods. So say you have a platform that's out there that's very similar to an Etsy, but instead of taking USD, it uses Bitcoin. You now have opened up the gateway to a ton of other businesses. Why does this matter? Well, you have certain companies that are out here that are payment companies that refuse to operate in regions that they view to be very unstable. So for the longest time, PayPal would not go into Nigeria. And PayPal is typically the very normal way that people would imagine to buy goods and services on Etsy. But if PayPal won't come into your country, then how are you going to be able to both sell goods and also receive goods from overseas? Then enter in Bitcoin, which companies that use Bitcoin, which don't have that same sort of prejudice attached to them, where they're like, we know that your Bitcoin is good because you really can't muck it up too much. And there's a certain limit. I'm not going to say there's no limit, but there's a certain limit to the amount of fraud that can happen with it. So let's just go ahead and open up, for example, this Etsy type store for you, to which you can use Bitcoin to accept payment and also to buy things with. So there are companies who are out there that are using the same sort of model where they're essentially copying a lot of businesses that we already have out here, but they're just now, instead of taking cash, they're using Bitcoin. And so businesses like that are really interesting to me. Businesses that allow people to send money overseas to their family members via a text, which you can do with Bitcoin, which is awesome. There's a lot of technology out there to where you can send money via SMS with Bitcoin. Yeah, exactly. You start having to not deal with some of the regulatory hurdles that you face if you're trying to send, say, U.S. dollars overseas via a text. You really can't do that, but you can do that with Bitcoin. So companies that are in that space are the ones that are particularly interesting to me.
Excellent. So you were talking about, the advantages that Bitcoin has with users. So who scores the biggest with Bitcoins? Is it users? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it investors? Or is it too early to really tell with Bitcoin?
Bitcoin and any other virtual currency, and also, by the way, I think the jury's still out if it really will be Bitcoin that wins out over everything else. I think it actually has the potential to really be a winner for users, which then, of course, then means that entrepreneurs and investors end up winning from it. But I think really, honestly, users, and especially users in underbanked communities, be it here in the U.S. or overseas, are the ones that if we get more creative with Bitcoin, again, will end up actually being the beneficiaries of Bitcoin being out there. Instead of having to worry about things like credit cards and credit ratings and things like that, you have cash? Okay, that's good. Okay, let's do business with each other.
So Bitcoin is really could potentially help underrepresented communities, especially here in I shouldn't say especially, but here in the U.S. as well, because of the fact that, this Bitcoin is not tied to credit ratings, it's not tied to anything else, but whether or not you want to be able to trade goods or buy goods from another person.
Exactly. And some people would make the argument that cash is that way too, but the problem with cash is that if I say I'm someone who is from South Central LA, with cash, I can't really use that cash as well to help support a business that's, say, overseas in another country. It just eases how people use currency. I'm trying to think of another way of phrasing that, but yes, I do think that underrepresented communities are the ones who can very much benefit from the use of Bitcoin because it gives them, this is what it is, it gives them access that they typically would not have had if they were using their own country's currency. That at the end of the day is why it could potentially open doors of entrepreneurship for underrepresented groups.
Now, let me ask you this, because there's always this ongoing talk about underrepresented groups not even having access to technology, right?
Woo!
So
how that?
So then how are companies, or how are some of these startups that you're seeing, how are they going about bringing this to the underrepresented communities, the ones who sound like they'll actually benefit most from Bitcoin? So how are these companies dealing with that whole thing? What are you saying out there?
So, and this is where we're sort of at a sticking point with regulations because it's becoming a little bit harder to do that. Because the regulations are, quote unquote, out there to protect the consumer, which, again, I'm not saying they're not, they are there. It makes it a little bit harder to get it into the hands of the everyday Joe Blow. So imagine, for argument's sake, that you are able to walk into Walgreens or Walmart. Actually, let's use Walmart. Everyone in the U.S. knows what Walmart is. Say you're able to walk into a Walmart, and next to the cash register, you see a gift card that has now been filled with Bitcoin. And so now you have access to these Bitcoins that you can now load onto your phone, which smartphone device, fill in the blank, and then you're able to start actually innovating using the Bitcoin. The problem is because of our current regulatory environment, access isn't there for our community, not to the way that it could be if some of the regulations were relaxed. So you have some people who are playing around with regulations, but they're playing around with some of these tools, but they're playing around with, say, in South America, in certain countries that have more relaxed regulations around the use of Bitcoin. And so those communities are able to sort of experiment a little bit more. What I find actually sort of interesting, and it's not necessarily Bitcoin, but even the U.S. government went overseas to certain countries in Africa. This was like well over 5-6 years ago, to experiment dealing with using like cell phones to send money and and things of that nature, like sending payments to soldiers in Iraq and fill in the blank, because it was an easier regulatory environment overseas than it was even in the U.S. And so that's just around just like dealing with like sending money and are you a bank, are you not a bank, are you operating as a bank? So until regulations are relaxed or until we create basically a safe zone, whatever that safe zone can be, it's going to be really difficult for people within the U.S. to have as much access to that technology so that they can actually innovate with Bitcoin. Because at the end of the day, Bitcoin is only as good as someone who's using it for value. If people don't have access to it to use it for value, it just doesn't have value. It's worthless.
Gotcha. So what type of are you? And this is kind of are you doing any? Because I know that the guys from FIVA, Lamar and Leif, they were actually, and big up to those guys for the last podcast, but they were actually talking about, one piece of this whole thing when it deals with, the underrepresented communities is actually education, right? Some people don't even know about Bitcoin at all, let alone having any type of access or about the technology. They don't even know what Bitcoin is. So are you doing anything in that sector to for education purposes to kind of bring this to the people and say, hey, this is what we need to be looking out for. This is what it is. This is what it's about. Here's how you could probably take advantage of it, that type of thing?
So I'm working on a couple of articles to do that. The thing is getting the articles in the hands of people that are not techies.
Gotcha.
Because, you know what I mean? Because when you talk to folks within the tech community, you're basically preaching to the choir, even if they don't understand all the ins and outs of the technology of Bitcoin, which, by the way, Greg, you actually understand the actual tech part of it really well, probably better than I do. I'm going to go ahead and give you props.
Thank you.
I'm serious. I give you props for that. But the big question is, how do we expose our community to tech? Because, let's back up even beyond Bitcoin. How do we take our people from being sharecroppers and consumers of tech to the people who are actually the builders of tech companies? Which then goes full circle to the work that you've been doing for the past, I think, 8 years. You've been doing it for more than 8 years. Maybe
it's been about that. Yeah.
About 8 years, and to the work that we've been doing as well, as far as how do we educate our overall community on what's out there and what resources are out there for tech. Because our people are entrepreneurs and they're very inventive, and if we just give them like one nugget that they can build off of, they can do amazing things. There are kids who've hacked cell phones to become alarm systems. But they had to have the cell phone in their hand. Oh, it's nuts what kids have been doing with cell phones. They've hacked their cell phones to basically start their tea before they get home, like while they're at school. Okay, start the tea kettle. I don't know how they figured that out, but they somehow figured it out. But they had to initially have the cell phone in their hands for them to be able to figure out how to do that sort of hacking. And so I think for our community, this is actually kind of going even further back, more of an educational component, is that we need to educate not our kids, but we need to educate the parents. We need to educate the preachers, the rabbis, the religious leaders. We need to educate grandma and grandpa on tech and how it's beneficial for our community. Once we educate them, then we will actually see our community using and developing more tech products.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's funny because a friend of mine, his mother is, she's quite the entrepreneur. She's opened up quite a few restaurants. Some have closed down, but some have been successful. Here in Cincinnati, she's been on Oprah before. She's a cook, and she actually opened up a restaurant right around the corner from where I work at. And I went in there one day, and I guess their credit card machine was down or something, and they were literally using, which is, I had to tell them this too, because this is not only is this they weren't using tech to kind of solve their problems, but also this was a security concern, and they were actually taking like carbon paper and taking the people's credit cards, and people were letting them do this, and then they would take a pen and rub it over over the credit card with the carbon. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, hey, there's things like Square, there's PayPal has something as well now. PayPal takes a little bit of something when you do this, but you don't have to worry about security or anything like that. Like, somebody could probably sue you for that, for what you're doing right now. You're not securing this payment in any way at all. How you're doing this? But that's a clear education issue, and not just flat out not knowing what's available out there in the technology world that they have access to. And PayPal will, of course, for you to use their service, they'll give you one of those card readers for free. Just so you'll start using their service. And I'm just sitting here thinking like, how do you not know this? But at the same time, I had to pull them aside and educate them and say, hey, this is not the way to do this. This is a security concern. Not only that, this is a much better way and more efficient way of doing it. You want to wait there and while you take somebody's credit card and rub it across some carbon paper, or would you rather just swipe it and have them sign and be on their way?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and one of my friends she's exposed to a lot. She's actually an attorney that also works with tech companies, but hardly anyone, at least in her circle that she was around, used Square. So when she came out here to visit me, and she saw people using Square and signing with their fingers on an iPad, she was like, what is that? And this is a friend that makes a substantial amount of money who basically writes deals for tech companies, but she wasn't aware.
Oh, wow.
What is funny to me, though, is who was aware of this? I went to a salon in Decatur, which, shout out to everyone from Decatur, and one of the ladies who was cutting my hair had a Square reader. If we want to actually educate our community on how to, on access and some of the tools that are out there, I say that we go to some of the cosmetology schools out there and give every one of those women and men a Square reader. They already have an Android phone, and then when they start using that, then the people whose hair they're cutting and whose hair is getting permed or blown out or whatever, they start to get exposed. We have to remember that the way that we get our community involved in tech is not from we have to teach our children and we have to teach our young people about tech, but it's also just making it accessible for our community so that it's easier for them to make money. And when they realize how much easier it is for them to make money, then they're going to start researching and just looking and finding other ways in which what other tools are out there that they can use as well. But we've got to stop just focusing on our CS majors, and we have to focus on the people who are doing our nails. The people, you know what I mean? Because there's some crazy innovation that we've never thought of that's going to rock the world.
Yeah, because, those are people right there that are dealing with certain problems in our community, and they know best how, what would help to solve those problems. So, yeah, definitely, 100%. And you know what? One of the hardest things that I've always found even dealing with Blacks in Technology, and I've always tried to say, how can I do this? It's not the CS majors. It's not the people that are already interested in tech. It's not the kids who have parents that are kind of guiding them and things like that.
Yeah.
It's how do we reach the people that are not those people, right? How do we reach the kid that is from a single parent home or might not have that type of support system? How do we reach the kid that they don't have any computers in their school? Or how do we reach that that person who may have just gotten out of jail or something like that and teach him or her ways to get involved in tech? So I've always tried to and this is a conversation for probably a whole nother podcast, but I've always had that in my mind, this is corralling people together who are of like minds is probably a lot easier. I would say it is a lot easier than it is to, pinpoint people out there and really try to get them involved in what we're doing. And, so if anybody out there has any suggestions, any answers or anything like that, let me know, because I've definitely been struggling with that aspect.
It's mobile. It's mobile. It's Android. It's Android phone. It's putting, I know this seems so basic, but it's putting something as simple as a phone in someone's hand and just going, okay, here's your phone. And let me teach you real quick, here's some shortcuts in which you can kind of break into this phone and do something. And then you just walk away. And then just let people innovate. Because honestly, the next wave of innovation that's going to hit the world is going to be directly tied to mobile. And what community uses mobile so much?
Oh, yeah.
African, we do. So, it's also it makes sense that some of there's actually a lot of investment money right now going into Africa, and it's specifically because of all the mobile that's going on there and all the mobile usage. You will have people who may or may not have, actually most people don't have cars in a lot of parts of the world, but we won't use that example. But Sony doesn't have that much, but they have a phone.
Yeah.
And with that phone, they're able to do all sorts of amazing things. My mind was blown what we could do with the SMS phone that I used for a short while I was back home in December. And so then to bring everything back round circle with Bitcoin, what we need to do is that those who are more tech savvy, who are within the Bitcoin space, need to start doing some more experiments with SMS and Bitcoin, and building new forms of banks, or you fill in the blank, just new platforms in which people can, via SMS, buy goods or post pictures of their goods. And then from there, people will start to innovate and start to build, because then it's so much more accessible for our community if it's on mobile. And then it also makes more sense because you can touch it and feel it, and because you can touch it, you're better able to work with it.
Wow, you probably just started something right there. So let you know, you probably got a bunch of people listening about to go home and drop something on and SMS and Bitcoin.
That's what they need to do. And then when you're done drawing it up, I hate to say this, but go overseas, because I wish it was happening here, but go overseas, test it out in a environment where the regulations are not as strict. And then after you've proven your idea, then come back to the U.S. and come on board and come help the rest of the Bitcoin community lobby for better policies. And not just the Bitcoin community, but also just people within the payment space, how to lobby for better policies that don't just benefit the Western unions that are out there who have the reserves to be able to innovate around money.
Nice. What are some resources for people that are listening in to this podcast? What are some resources for folks to learn more about Bitcoin and get more involved?
Okay, so one of the resources is CoinDesk, and actually there's one particular person who I love who writes extensively. Forgive me, it's going to take me a second just to pull up that. CoinDesk is really great. The Bitcoin Foundation is also another organization that you need to just keep tabs on. There's another gentleman by the name of Paul Snow. I love Paul Snow. This man is very active in the Bitcoin community, and he dropped something that I was like, ooh, you said this as a white man about the problem with credit. And he was just talking about just the arbitrary nature of how we assign if someone is credit worthy and how much it actually harms minority communities. And I was like, whoa. So pay attention to this. His name is Paul Snow. Paul Snow. He's going to be doing the Texas Bitcoin Conference at the end of March. If you get a chance to hook up with Paul Snow in some form or fashion, he will basically open the kingdom, the gates to the kingdom of heaven for you, and will then be able to just sort of make other introductions and also just basically drop knowledge on you so that you could just understand more of what's going on with Bitcoin and also some of the benefits of Bitcoin. What's really interesting about Paul in particular is that he's very, very well connected worldwide, and he brings in a wide array of people to his conference that are interested in innovations in Bitcoin.
Excellent. And that's the Texas Bitcoin Conference in the March?
End of March, not during South by Southwest. They had it about during South by Southwest last year. It was too chaotic. This year it's going to be at the end of March. And you know, Texas being Texas, you could use Bitcoin to buy a gun because it's Texas. There's a lot of interesting things there, but yes, definitely Bitcoin Foundation. Stay on top of that. Even follow them on Twitter. There's also Cointelegraph. The woman who puts that out, she is very, very, very active. And this woman feels like she's all over the world all at the same time. But she's a great resource for people. Just follow her on Twitter or follow her on Facebook, and then you'll just get things to sort of pop up. There actually are guests from the last Blacks in Technology. They are also really good people just to sort of watch and see what they're doing. They're in I like the way they think. They're trying to help our people move forward. And I do not have their Twitter handle on me. I'll have to find that.
Are you talking about the guys from FIFA?
Yeah, I don't have their Twitter handle on me. But anyways, they're really good people to just sort of keep tabs with, and they're also extremely accessible as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, their Twitter handle is @FIFA Wallet, and that's PHEEVA Wallet.
Awesome. Most of the people within the Bitcoin community are very accessible, and they honestly will, talk with you if you want to ask them a question. That is one really, really, really big plus to the community, is that don't worry, reach out, ask a question, they'll be supportive, and they'll steer you in the right direction.
Excellent, excellent. So how do folks get in contact with you and stay updated on your activities around Bitcoin?
Wow, so you can definitely go to my website, which is a really long name, forgive me. It's www.venture, VENTURE, gained, G as in giraffe, AINED, legal.com, Venture Gained Legal. You can follow either me or my law partner on Twitter, and you can also follow Venture Gained on Twitter as well. My Twitter handle is NUKUKU, and from my Twitter handle, then you'll be able to find the Twitter handle for our law firm and then also for my law partner as well. My law partner is also particularly entertaining, so I'll go ahead and give you that heads up when you follow her on Twitter.
Nice, nice. Well, I think that's all the questions that I have, and then I definitely appreciate you coming on and dropping some serious information on us about Bitcoin. You gave us a lot of good information about the legal concerns and policies and things like that around Bitcoin, and we'll definitely be following you and hearing more about Bitcoin.
Awesome, awesome. Go innovate with Bitcoin. There's not the same rules around cash money, so do it first with Bitcoin, and then also think about innovating with USD. That's all I have to say.
Excellent. Oh, one last thing. Black Founders. Give us the URL and the Twitter handle for Black Founders. It's pretty easy.
The Twitter handle for Black Founders is @BlackFounders. So BLACK Founders, FOUNDERS. And our website is www.blackfounders.com. You can also find us on Facebook. Please add us on Facebook. Please follow us on Twitter. What we are also doing, and people in our community have a tendency to be shy about what they're working on, but we shouldn't be shy about what we're working on. So on Wednesdays, we essentially do a shout-out where we ask people to tell us and to tweet at us what it is that they're working on. You would be amazed at what the people in our community are doing. We're creating some amazing companies. We just don't talk about it. So in the same way that we get really big and puffed up with our basketball heroes or et cetera, I want us to get just as proud and puffed up about what we're doing in our tech companies. It's just as great.
Is there a hashtag that we can use to follow that, or?
Yes, let me pull up the hashtag right now. Thank you for asking me about that. It'll take me just a second.
Yeah, because I want to promote that. That's hot. I like that. And that's every Wednesday. Is that every Wednesday? Is that a certain time?
Every Wednesday. It usually goes out around, I want to say it's probably 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as far as Pacific Standard Time, let's see. Let me pull up the Twitter handle real quick. Oh, there's MLK.
Okay.
Today is... I might have to send that handle to you. Oh, wait, here it is. BS Stand Up. Hashtag B as in boy, F as in Frank, stand up. So Black Founders, stand up. Stand up and tell us what you're working on.
Oh, nice. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Once again, thanks a lot. Definitely appreciate it. Congratulations to you and Black Founders and everything you all are doing. Remember to hit me up. Let me know what you guys are working on so I can, help promote it. And much success to you and everybody else over at Black Founders.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Much success to you. You're building an amazing platform for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
You too. Okay. Bye.
And that is it for this episode of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. I want to thank all our listeners for listening in. Thanks to our guest, Nnena Ukuku. She was great, right? Wonderful. Gave us some great information about Bitcoin. And stay tuned for another great episode of the Big Tech Talk podcast. In 2 weeks, we'll be joined, hopefully, by Yori. She'll be live from South by Southwest, so tune in to that. Remember, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Take care and have a good
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.